Welcome to College Football Addiction. Today we are breaking down the Texas schedule, and I'm giving you the insight on how you should bet your money in our Texas preview presented by BetUS. Now listen, the Texas schedule is one that I think is going to be tougher than they have seen in an extremely long time. Obviously, moving from the Big 12 to the SEC is no joke, and Texas knows that it's no joke. They also have one of the biggest out-of-conference games of the season, playing at Michigan in week 2. Now, I'm thankful that they play that game because I have no skin in the game, but for Texas fans, they certainly would not have anticipated that they'd be making the move to the SEC and playing the defending national champions on the same year back when this game was scheduled. However, that is what they are going to do. How does Texas end up faring? Now, Texas has an easy win week 1 against Colorado State, and then all eyes in the country are on that week 2 matchup at Michigan. The biggest game of the week. It certainly should be where I think game day ends up. Gonna be a lot of fun to see what happens up north there. And Michigan lost a lot of talent. They've sent a lot of guys to the NFL. They're quarterbacks in the NFL right now. They have a lot of guys that they're going to need to replace. However, Michigan has recruited well, and their trenches are always absurdly good. And my concern for Texas, not only in this game, but also just this season, is that Texas was too inconsistent last year. They'd have games where they'd go into Bryant-Denny and win by 10, though I do think we know that Alabama was a different team early in the year, almost losing to USF and just not looking very competitive. But they'd go on the road and win in Bryant-Denny by 10, and then they'd come home and they'd struggle with the likes of Kansas State and others. Kansas State had some good wins, but Texas should have never struggled with some of the Big 12 competition they struggled with. And my biggest question for them this year in the SEC is, can they avoid that? Can they avoid being inconsistent? Because this year, it'll bite them in the butt. When you're inconsistent on the road in the SEC or against premier teams, that is a death sentence. And that is how you end up with a 9-3 or 8-4 record instead of the 11-1 that they were able to do in the Big 12. They had so much more talent than everybody else in the Big 12, save Oklahoma, that they could play inconsistently. And until I see that consistency from Texas, I don't know that I can pick them in this game. I think Michigan finds a way to get this win at home. I think basically the two sides of the spectrum, you've got Texas, everyone's singing your praises, how you are just destined for the SEC championship in year 1. And on the Michigan side, I think you've got hey, you guys are not going to be any good because you lost everybody from last year's team, so we're counting it against you. We don't think you can get it done. And I think that's going to fester. And whether Texas comes in overconfident or whether Michigan comes in as playing the underdog role, I think Michigan finds a way to squeak this out and get the win at home. Certainly wouldn't surprise me if Texas won this game. Texas may even be a slight favorite in this game. I think Michigan, if the points are going the other way, I'm going to take Michigan as a home dog, and I'll take the Wolverines to win the game. Texas comes home, gets 3 wins that are no doubters: UTSA, UL Monroe, and Mississippi State. Mississippi State probably the worst team in the SEC. It's either them or Arkansas ahead of Vandy, but competitive football teams. Mississippi State, Arkansas, one of the some of the worst teams over there. Texas gets the wins. They're 4-1 with a very good chance to be 5-0 if we're being honest, right? They get back on the right track. They're 1-0 in conference. They're 4-1 overall. That's worst case to me. I think they could be 5-0, but a really tough stretch upcoming for Texas here after those first 5 games. Before I get to that tough stretch, let's give a little love to BetUS. The best thing about these previews is that if you love the prediction or hate the prediction for this team, you can go to BetUS right now and you can wager on what you think is going to happen. You think I'm too high or too low on a team, go put your money where your mouth is like I am and bet on the over or under on wins. BetUS has a 125% deposit match up to your first $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. They got the best customer service in the game, and the website and mobile site are extremely easy to use. I appreciate BetUS for their support, and lock in your bet right now for the Longhorns over/under on wins. Now, they also have to then play Oklahoma and Georgia in back-to-back weeks coming out of that first 5 games. And this is extremely tough. Oklahoma has owned them for the recent past. And I think that the way that this series has gone and the way that these or this rivalry has gone really isn't good news for Texas. Now, the past is no predictor of what's coming. And here's my ultimate takeaway on the Oklahoma UGA games. I think that Texas splits these games. I don't think that's controversial. I don't think that that's something that's insane to think. I think that a rivalry game and then playing against maybe the best team in the country, the number one team in the country, maybe at this point, I think that splitting those two would be pretty fair. So then you ask me, how do they split them? How does it go? How do they end up getting the win and the loss? Well, I think they dropped the game to Oklahoma. I like the matchup. I like Venables on the sideline over there, and I think that they end up getting the win again in a game that Texas is incredibly frustrated by, but it will be a shootout and it will be fun. And I'll always call it the Red River Shootout, but I think Oklahoma gets the win there. However, Texas gets some payback just a week later. UGA coming to town, and Texas takes down the top dogs, no pun intended, to get the win there and improve their SEC record overall to 2-1. Then you play at Vandy. I think you get the win there. Win against UF, win against Arkansas, win against Kentucky. I think all of those are pretty straightforward. I think the UGA game sets up in a really good spot. I think they're motivated after the loss to Oklahoma. I think they're motivated after dropping their second game and knowing that they cannot lose again if they want to accomplish their goals, if they want to get to where they're going to. And I do. I think they beat Georgia. I think they've got some easy games ahead of them. Vandy, no good. Florida, no good. At Arkansas, no good. Kentucky at home. Kentucky could be a surprise team. Surprised to get to 8 wins maybe. But I think the way it sets up, they get payback after losing to Oklahoma by beating Georgia. And then it all comes down to that last game of the year, which is certainly very interesting. A game that we haven't seen much at all. And here's my bold prediction for the year. Here's the hot take of the year. I think that game against Texas A&M is going to surprise some people. Now, Texas is going to be a favorite. This game is at home. It's at Texas A&M, and I still think that even though the Aggies are at home, I think Texas is going to be the favorite. But something always happens that's weird on rivalry weekend, and that last weekend of the year against Texas A&M, I think the Aggies pick up the win. That moves Texas' record to 9-3. And here's maybe the good news for Texas fans as I do this preview. I think that 2 of the games that I have you losing, you're going to be favorites in. And so it should be very, very easy. If this team is for real and they can be a little bit more consistent, it should be very easy for them to get to 10 or 11 wins. I just need to see that consistency. I just need to see them put it together. I need to see more out of Texas before I can be a fully bought in, fully invested believer in what they're doing. Again, all 3 games that I have them losing are very winnable. The Georgia game, probably very losable. I think the absolute floor for this team would be 8-4. I'd be shocked if they go 8-4. To me, that would mean they lost to Oklahoma, UGA, A&M, and Michigan. I don't see that happening. I think they have more wins than that. I think 9-3 or 10-2 are your most likely. I just need to see more out of Texas and more consistency out of Texas because this isn't the Big 12 anymore. And though they play some pretty bad teams, Mississippi State, Vandy, UF, Arkansas, Kentucky, those should all be wins. Though they play some bad teams, they still have to prove it to me week after week after week in the SEC, which I will not be surprised at all if they do. But until I see it, I just don't know that I can buy it. Now, they beat Michigan to start the year. They beat Michigan in week 2. I'm probably going to change the way I'm viewing that Texas A&M game later in the year, and I think they'll have the inside track to get to 11-1. They'll really just need to split with Oklahoma and UGA. But I do think that Texas A&M game is going to mean a lot to both teams, and don't be surprised if the Aggies pick up a huge win the last game of the year. Listen, if you think I'm wrong here, again, go to BetUS, bet on these games, use the link in my description right now to get a huge deposit match of 125% up to $2,000 and prove me wrong. Put your money where your mouth is like I am, and let's go. I'm taking 9 wins here for Texas. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and we'll talk to you soon on College Football Addiction.